participation in suggestions, all these things in finalizing the program. And I think it will be the first time a university in India is doing such an activity. Saida, you can also cooperate with us.
Sunil, you're a very sharp person. I know Kerala, you always like to be the first of everything. Huh?
Yeah, I think Rajesh can explain that program now before starting this. Is it time now? Okay, I think
we will start with the presentation, right? Yeah. So because we are close to 10, so we are eagerly, our participants are waiting to hear you from Google experts in this field. Yeah, welcome, Reshma. You please, go ahead.
So, good morning, dear resource persons, delegates, and all other participants. Welcome back to the International Awareness Webinar on Understanding Misinformation, Intervention Strategies and Ideas. It's the second day of our webinar. There is a slight change in today's session for the information to the participants, as Ms. Shruti Menon, who committed for a session today, is not able to join with us. So it's slightly modified the schedule. Today we'll have 4 sessions. First one is how Google News Initiatives is fighting against misinformation, led by Ms. Irene J. Liu from Google. And the second one is on data science for fake news detection by Dr. Deepak Patman of Queen's University, Belfast, UK. Followed by the third session, elements of fact-checking and verification by Sri Pradeep Sinha. And the fourth one will be mis or disinformation spread in India during pandemic by Dr. Isar Sanjeev. It will be followed by a panel discussion on break the fake. I wish all of you a good day. And let's begin today's session.
Reshma, one moment, I want to add some more. And in the first session, Mr. Saeed Nasrekat from the Data Leads and the founder of Data Leads, and the Surabhi Malik. She's the country manager for interviews in India. They are joining Irene to deliver the session because they are the part of Google's program in India. So for the introduction to all. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Reshma. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Now let's listen to the details on how Google News Initiative is fighting against misinformation. Our resource person, Irene J. Liu, leads Google News in Asia Pacific region. She was previously an investigative reporter and data editor at Reuters, where she was a 2017 Pulitzer finalist in the national reporting category. Earlier, she worked at the South China Morning Post and as a political reporter with the Times Union in Albany, New York. She teaches data-driven investigative journalism at the University of Hong Kong and the China University of Hong Kong. She will be assisted with Surabhi Malik, who is a program director, India Internet News, and Zaid Nazakat, founder and editor-in-chief Data Leads. And let me invite the team for the first presentation today. Welcome you all.
Thank you so much, Reshma. I just shared my screen. Can everyone see that? Does it look okay? Yep. Okay, great. Excellent. So hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. It is such an honor to be here. And I'm always so impressed when people take time out of their busy weekends, especially during this very challenging time, to talk about such an important issue. And thank you so much to the University of Calicut for inviting us to speak about our work. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly go through sort of broadly, globally, what the Google News Initiative is, and then talk more specifically and spend most of our time with my amazing co-speakers on the panel, Syed and Surabhi, to talk about how we're actually conducting this work to fight misinformation in India, because the work of data leads and internews in this space in India is just so incredible. And instead of having me talk about it, I really would love to make sure that we have the leaders who are leading these initiatives to talk about their work, and then we'll also leave some questions, time for questions at the end. So if you have any questions, please just hold tight, and then we'll get to them at the end. So just very quickly, my name is Irene Liu, and I lead something called the Google News Lab in Asia Pacific. And what the Google News Lab does is we really focus on working with journalists to use technology to enhance the reporting and storytelling. One of the biggest issues I think that we are now confronting is the issue of misinformation. As journalists, we have always been in the business of trying to speak truth to power and get clear, factual information to our audiences. But more and more, not only is it about us producing good quality information, but we also need to fight all the different kinds of rumors and hoaxes and other kinds of content that we see online in many different places. And so as journalists, that requires a very special skill set. I understand that you had Owen Sweeney speak yesterday, and you'll have Pratik Sinha speak today about verification techniques. And I think that this is the kind of skill set that you don't actually necessarily learn when you're learning basic journalism or kind of the fundamentals of journalism. There are special techniques for it. And so how can we all build our skills and use technology to fight misinformation? So just to start more broadly, so why does the Google News Initiative exist at all? Well, news matters very much to Google. This is our CEO, Sundar Pichai, who has said that Google cares deeply about journalism. We believe deeply in spreading knowledge to make life better for everyone. It's at the heart of Google's mission. It's the mission of publishers and journalists. Our products, especially search, rely on high quality information. When people come to us, they're seeking answers to questions, and we want to make sure that we are delivering the highest quality information back when people are asking and coming to us for information. And it might just be because I was a reporter before, but I definitely believe that journalists play a huge role in providing that high quality information. And as we've seen, especially during the past year, as we have lived through the COVID-19 pandemic, in fact, as news changes and as information continues to be updated, journalists and news has actually been at the forefront of getting information to the people. And so it's been so important for us to work so closely with not only healthcare providers, organizations like the World Health Organization, governments and ministries of health, but especially also journalists to fight misinformation about this pandemic, and also many other topics that affect our daily lives. So in terms of, kind of why Google specifically is working on this, the mission of Google is to organize the world's information, and news is a vital source of that information. In addition to that, this is less on my patch in terms of the work that I do, but Google as a company invests in products to help news publishers succeed so that the users who come to Google have access to high quality information online. And then, the company actually really truly believes that informed citizenry does make society stronger, that we believe it's important to have access to information when you need it. And so it is our mission to make sure that our products fulfill that goal. We've been working partner hand in hand with the news industry for over 20 years. You can see this is a little timeline of, since Google was founded in 1998, which was over 20 years ago. And since then, 2002 is when Google News launched. And over the course of the many years, we've incorporated additional products, added new services. In 2015, the organization that I work for, Google News Lab, was founded. And it came to Asia in 2016. And since then, we've built in a number of other initiatives, including the Google News Initiative in 2018. And that is Google's overarching kind of effort to support the news industry. So the News Lab is one part of the work of the Google News Initiative. So, what the Google News Initiative did was made a commitment to really globally support organizations all over. And you can see here that we've worked with 6,250 news partners in 118 countries. Just in basically, I think this numbers was updated as of last year, through $189 million in global funding. And that continues to this day. And the work that the News Lab does with journalists, it goes hand in hand with the work that other teams do with the business side of news, and then also with product. So there, a lot of times we have these questions about like, well, how do you work with the Google News Initiative, right? How do we get involved? So a lot of what we do, a big part of it is related to training and programs and, continuing education. We have the G&I Digital Growth Program, which is focused on the business model of news and how to, transform your business to focus on your digital audience. And then the G&I Training Center for Journalists, which is actually led by the News Lab, focused on how you can use digital tools to enhance your reporting and storytelling. And specifically, there is a section specifically on verification and fighting misinformation. So those are the kinds of ways that you can actually participate anytime with the Google News Initiative. Also, we do have a number of application-based programs throughout the year. So in the past, we've had, in APAC, we've had the G&I Innovation Challenge, where news organizations could actually apply to receive funding to work on innovative projects in their newsrooms. We have a number of labs. So for example, we have a data labs and the subscription labs. So if news organizations want to really focus on one aspect of their business, they can actually work with consultants and others to really work on it for their own organizations. And actually currently at the moment, we are in the midst of reviewing applications for an open fund that we launched specifically to fight misinformation on vaccines related to COVID-19. And I'm really thrilled to say that Syed, who you'll hear from very soon, is one of our external jury members. And so that's sort of one of the kinds of application-based programs that we're working on right now. So, in terms of just like structurally, how does the G&I work and how do we work together? There are lots of people who are involved in the Google News Initiative. You can see that there are lots of missions and goals here of news publishers, and it's multifaceted. We like to break it down into a few different buckets, right? So 1 is understanding your audience. 2 is enhancing journalism. 3, expanding distribution. 4, growing revenue. And 5, creating an innovative culture. Today, what we'll talk about is really number 2, focusing on the journalism part, because the work that I do and the News Lab does is really focused on journalism and most especially fighting misinformation and media literacy. And so that's really the area we'll focus on. So, in terms of the way that we do this, we do have a set of tools that we've built to try to help journalists work more efficiently. So this is not just for verification or fighting misinformation, but tools that help you transcribe, translate, how you can use tools to do data visualization and produce more interactive graphics, a number of different tools that are out there. And then, of course, we have been working to build bespoke tools as well to support journalists as they do data journalism or investigative reporting or verification of images and video. In addition, we also do a lot of training for newsrooms. So basically, it's not, and to be honest, especially in India, where we have been partnering with data leads and internews on our trainings for journalists, it's actually, yes, we do talk about Google tools, but in fact, we talk about the whole range of tools available for journalists to fight misinformation, to verify photos and also videos and things like that. So yes, some of it's Google tools, but we also do a lot of training on a number of other tools as well. And so this is sort of the different organizations that are involved in this. If you're interested in looking at tools for journalists, I would very much recommend that you check out the Journalist Studio from Google. This is actually a very interesting tool that lets you essentially upload a lot of documents into the cloud. It will do optical character recognition, which means that it can read the text of these, and then it allows you to search and look for entities. And there are a number of new features that are rolling out in that product. So, and it's free of charge. So definitely recommend that you take a look at that. If you are on the business side of news and you're interested in understanding your audience and who is coming to your website and how their behavior can be optimized so that they perhaps will eventually stay on longer, read more articles, or even later on, if you have a subscription or a membership program, can actually how you can actually optimize your website so that audiences, loyal readers, can become members or subscribers. And then Google News Lab, of course, does a lot of training. We do training in person. Before COVID, we would actually go to newsrooms and have in-person training. Unfortunately, at the moment, just for safety reasons, we're really focused mostly on virtual training. But once everything, well, hopefully goes back to normal, we will go back to in-person training. But I'm really thrilled to say that in India, in fact, the GNI India Training Network, which you'll hear about from Syed, has trained over 25,000 journalists through either in person or through live virtual trainings over the past 2.5 years. And since the News Lab started in India in 2016, we've actually trained over 38,000 journalists in person, which is it's not a competition, but definitely the most journalists trained in any country in the world by the News Lab. So we're really thrilled. And I have to, at this point, give a huge shout out to Surbi Malik, who was our first teaching fellow. She worked with the News Lab from 2016 to 2018 and basically never stopped moving and went to almost every newsroom imaginable in India and trained journalists everywhere, and then helped through her work at Internews to help build the GNI India Training Network. So that's pretty much it for me. I'm gonna actually stop presenting at the moment and then come back. And with that, I would love to bring up Syed Nazakat to talk about the GNI India Training Network, and actually Surbi as well, because she was deeply involved and a huge partner until they decided we launched another program, Fakshala, which Surbi will talk about as well. So Syed, why don't you please, if you can, tell us all about the amazing work of the India Training Network and also Fact and Fit.
Yeah, thank you so much, Irene. Really a pleasure joining. I think our colleagues in Kerala at Calicut University. I think this is just amazing, to be honest. I see the Department of Computer Science hosting this fashion international conference. And then that's the collaboration of people. Let's say
sorry for interrupting, sir. Your network is poor, I think. Your network seems poor. Yeah, it's okay now. Okay, you can continue. Okay.
Okay. I will try to maybe switch over. If it continues, I will switch over. Can you see me? Hi, Sunil. Can you see my screen, Sunil?
Yeah, it is okay now. It's okay now. You can continue. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So my name is Syed Razakar. I'm the founder and the team lead, the data leads. And we're really privileged to be working with Internews and Google in the last 2 and 3 years on a project, actually, which was a modest initiative in 2018, but which eventually became a robust community of fact-checking and educators and journalists in India. The theme was essentially that I think by 2018, we were already almost convinced that looking at the changing landscape, the changing media landscape, the challenge which created for
Syed, sorry to interrupt, but I thought you said you were sharing your screen. I don't think we can see your screen.
So,
Hi, Syed, are you sharing your screen as well?
Sunil, can you see the screen? No.
We can't see your screen, Syed.
Okay. So why
Sorry.
don't you go?
Dr. Lajesh, can you help Mr. Syed to share his screen?
Hello, sir. Now you are the presenter.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Surabhi, why don't you go ahead and I will sort it out.
Sure, Syed. I know, with your computer probably giving some glitch, we could switch to Factshala and then come back to talking about the Google News initiative, which of course, was the program that we started first. But if I may quickly also ask organizers to give me rights to share my screen, please, Sunil and Levish, if you could allow me to share.
I will make you the presenter.
Sure.
By the time I think, Syed, please check your
ready.
network.
Sure. And while I'm getting, rights to share my screen, if I may just, jump in on the GNI, network as well, details of which Syed will share. But this is the first program against misinformation that we launched in 2018. This was in the run up to the big elections. We were seeing this deluge of misinformation, which is when we teamed up along with Google News Initiative, Internews and Data Leads. We all came together to bring together the biggest network of, journalists training program, which helped not just independent journalists and freelancers and press clubs, but also newsrooms build capacity to learn fact checking and verification. And having done that and run a successful stint till 2020 and still continuing, last year we launched Fact Shala, which is our media and literacy initiative, which I'm going to talk to you about. Can I ask Sunil and Lavish again if I have the sharing rights?
Yeah, you are the presenter now.
Sure. I think I do have the rights. I'll quickly go to the screen.
Yeah. Yes, it's visible.
Can you see my screen now? Sunil, can you see my screen now?
Not yet appeared, but it is coming. Don't worry.
So thanks for having me here, on this very pertinent discussion, everyone, where we're discussing a webinar on understanding fake news. I believe this is one of the biggest challenges that the media industry has been facing over the last, few years. To understand the different facets that go into, tackling this problem. What is it that we all can do in our individual capacities to tackle this big menace that has been affecting, people around us, our organizations, and the pandemic hit, we saw how misinformation, did become indeed a huge problem, and which is where, all of us need to be putting all our might behind working towards tackling misinformation. We've been working on tackling the problem of misinformation along with Google News Initiative and our wonderful partners at Data Lead since 2018, which is when the first program around tackling work was our pioneer effort to train journalists in India on fact-checking skills. And like Irene just mentioned, along with data leads and a core team of 250 plus trainers, collectively about 25,000 journalists and journalism students did get a chance to learn a in different ways, to teach their audience, how to sift between fact and fiction, or what the right, news was around any viral information that was doing the rounds. In 2020, having done that, I'm also very happy to share that India happens to be one of the countries with the largest number of IFCN certified fact checkers, which was in a way a result of the GNI program. A lot of our program trainees indeed went ahead and then launched, fact checking initiatives in their own newsrooms. And are collectively doing a lot of fact checking in multiple languages now. A lot of you are privy to some of our program trainees who are leading all of these programs, across very many languages. Having done that, we thought, we'll then shift our focus on the different side. The problem is such that it needs to be handled both from the demand and supply side, which is when Fact Shala, our second initiative to fight misinformation, was launched, and we teamed up again with the same team, bringing together, this cohort, which I'll be talking to you about. A quick introduction about, where I come from. I'm the program director and country lead for India for Internews, primarily handling misinformation, projects in India since 2018. Prior to that, like Irene mentioned, I was, training a lot of newsrooms and journalists on, digital tools or how to tackle misinformation. Internews primarily is a non-profit organization, and we've been empowering people and communities worldwide with trustworthy information and working in about 100 countries over the last 35 years with one primary motive in mind, which is that we can allow people to get access to high quality trustworthy information that they need to take informed decisions, hold power to account, and lead better lives for themselves. And we do this by working with local media, with civil society activists and other stakeholders to build healthy information ecosystems, especially in areas where they're most needed. In India, like I said, we began with working with journalists and newsrooms in 2018, helping them build capacities on launching fact-checking initiatives, and bringing together experts, building successful collaborations, and creating training networks. The two networks that we've just talked to you about happen to be the biggest training networks tackling misinformation anywhere in the world. And I'm very glad that you have had a chance to speak to, some of the experts that we've had the luck to work with, Owen Sweeney, Pratik Sinha, Kanchan from IGNM, the BBC folks who I know aren't able to join you today, but we've had a chance to work with all of them as well to feed into this big curriculum. In India, as you would know, anything needs to be done in scale. So we brought together all of them, brainstorm to see how we could scale this initiative so everybody across different newsrooms, and the masses have access to understand the information ecosystem better. Which is what brings me to our, latest initiative. Like I said, Pakshala India Media Literacy Network is, a media and information literacy program that we launched in 2020 with the support of Google.org and Google News Initiative, and in collaboration with data leads. Unlike a lot of other programs that existed before 2020, a lot of media literacy resources were focused either on students, or the programs were really meant to be run in schools and colleges. But we thought this was one program we wanted to take to the new internet users, coming online for the first time. All of India has been seeing a swelling population of, internet users coming online every year, but they've never had a chance to discuss this big problem at length, say with an expert, to understand whether a piece of information that they're accessing is true or not. Which is where we thought of bringing together, this program called Fact Shala, which is a pan-India media literacy initiative aimed to empower adults in non-metro cities. So our target audience for this was going to smaller cities, which in itself, was a challenge, especially when we were starting, the pandemic hit. But we were lucky to get support of some amazing partners and a wonderful team of trainers who joined and lent their support to this program, have done some, incredible work, which I'll be talking to you about. So this program, like I said, was launched with the support of Google.org and Google News Initiative, taking the Google News Initiative India training networks work, one notch up. So both to cover both the demand and supply side of it. So people are able to think more critically, and understand their online information ecosystem, better. What are the kind of, informations that they access? since there has been a sea of change in how they are consuming information, but have they had have they ever had a chance to look at it from a top view, or take a back seat and understand is everything that they're accessing online, is that true or not? So that was the entire aim of this program, which special focus on underserved communities and women. The program did follow a unique train the trainer model, like I said, to cater to an audience as diverse and unique as India. We thought, what is it that we could do, collectively? So we brought together again a very diverse team of 253 trainers, which involved a lot of media educators, and I know a lot of you have joined this session, as well. So pleased to see all of you here, and a lot of journalists and fact checkers, again with the Google News initiatives, support. Picking from the previous program, and also a lot of civil society workers and NGO workers. The trainings for these programs were done in 15 plus languages. Like I said, often the biggest challenge for us in India is how do we ensure that people in different states coming from different backgrounds and speaking the very many different languages get access and are able to relate to whenever they're taught something new. So which is where our train the trainer model did help, and the trainings were done in their own villages, in their own cities, in remote corners of different parts of the country, in the language of their preference. Additionally, since we were doing this, when we were planning this program soon after, the pandemic, hit, and we had to change, strategies, and we onboarded also 63 community radios who helped us a lot, reaching specifically rural audience. These 63 radio stations operate in at least 18 states, and broadcast languages, at least I think about 10 plus languages and dialects. And we then designed a curriculum that was built in consultation with media literacy experts from India and outside, and did a baseline study along with Stanford History Education Group. I'm very glad that we got the support of all of our partners, Google News Initiative, data leads, all of the media educators who join us, the journalists who pitched in, the fact checkers who we could collectively then as a team address this problem. We are also very thankful to all our curriculum partners, MET, BBC World Service, the Boom Live, Don Bosco University, IIGNM, Stanford and Hong Kong University, and also our radio partners who helped us take this critical information to the masses at a time when they needed it the most. All of us know in India, we are privy to the fact that when a piece of information goes viral, and if there is no way to understand whether that's true or right, it can lead to grave repercussions, and be that bottleneck in the flow of information, especially when the pandemic hit. So these trainers, even during pandemic, went all out, to all of these areas, in remote cities, and have collectively, conducted at least 600 plus sessions, where at least 25,000 plus participants have participated already. Out of which, like I said, our focus has always been to include as many women as possible. 14,000 of which were women. These sessions were conducted in at least 15 plus languages and dialects. The sessions initially, of course, were fully online, but then eventually in remote areas, because of no internet, poor internet connections, there were sessions which were done hybrid. Also on-air programs, that our community radio stations, ran. We are also very thankful to a lot of NGO partners who came along either as trainers or to help us conduct, trainings, so we could reach, as many more people and help them understand, how they should make sense of the information that they are often bombarded with. The community radio stations also came from, say, the nonprofit sector or educational institutions, or they were agro-based and ran programs in about 10 plus languages. And in all conducted, about 200 in-person sessions as well. So along with on-air sessions, we also, took their help to reach their audiences in person, where they sat probably, at times running their programs with chart papers, with decks, running all of these sessions and reaching far more people. I wanted to give you, some glimpses of some of the trainings that, these people have done to ensure that people who often do not have access to discuss such issues, with experts, were included in this program, because our trainings did happen in a lot of non-metro cities across the country, villages, and focused on underserved communities. Some of our training participants were health workers, doctors, often Anganwadi workers and ASHA workers. People from LGBT community were also included through a lot of, NGOs that we worked with. Trainings were also held at refugee camps. Often also domestic abuse and trafficking survivors were the one who attended, these trainings. And for the first time got to discuss, and could relate to each one of them, in their own respective cases were affected by misinformation. But this program helped them understand through these experts who we trained, with the help of all of our wonderful partners on how to, identify misinformation, make sense of the information that they, often access online. Trainings were often held for also women self-help groups, for religious leaders, for teachers, for college students, some of which I'm going to share in the next few slides as well. For example, Anganwadi workers were trained in a lot of states, right from Tamil Nadu to Kerala, Punjab, Rajasthan, and also, up north. We also had one of our trainers do the training, and this workshop in the largest red light district in Asia, in Bengal with the Darbar Mahila Samamanya, Samiti. So the idea was to include, as many people who've been, underserved or haven't had a chance, marginalized communities as well. A lot of our trainings happened in villages, in states like Uttar Pradesh, Tripura, Jammu and Kashmir. In remote areas of Jammu and Kashmir, we have one of our trainers actually traveling on foot, where there is no road but to reach a hill, station area where she conducted her training, probably, spending time bringing together all of the village, people. Often some of our trainings are held at the village headman's house itself, just like what you're seeing on your screen, in consultation with Panchayat. So we see a lot of people were eager to learn more about this, but never had the option to. To be honest, when we were starting, we were a little apprehensive, thinking that people have their day jobs, will they have the time to sit through it? But the amount of interest that we've seen, people really do care to know about all of these things. And thanks to, this network, we have been able to take this to people who are the most affected and need to know more about this. Trainings will also help for community reporters, for example, for organizations like Gramvani, Khabar Area, who can then, transfer this knowledge through their programs to, their communities as well. One of the trainings happened, say, for example, in a Rohingya refugee camp in Rajasthan. LGBT communities that, like I mentioned, we're also taking these trainings to the differently abled, communities across, the country. These were just some of the glimpses of the trainings that Fakshala, did. Our trainers are still at it. They didn't take a break even during COVID. We were very, surprised to see them going all out on the field, even during a pandemic, because they realized that this is something that their communities or people around them need the most at this critical time, during a pandemic when, all of us struggle to know whether, this vaccine is correct, or can I go out? Do I need to wear mask? And all of the questions they had, where can they find answers to such questions? So our trainers, were very sure that they should be taking this information out to their, communities, to peer groups around, to, families around in that year. And we were very glad that through their efforts, through different, models, online, hybrid, and on air, they did go out and take these trainings to a lot many more people. I'm sure, these were a sneak peek into some of the trainings that happened. We'll have many more to come. Once again, huge thanks to all of our, partners, trainers, data leads, and Google Initiative and Google.org for supporting this program. So people and communities who often do not get a chance to discuss and learn about this, can know more on how to take right decisions based on the information that they're accessing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Surbi. Really, I think it's really amazing how the Fakshala project has moved in the last 1 year. And I think it also encompasses our understanding that it needs the misinformation and disinformation needs a whole society approach. And Fakshala has essentially successfully established that if you equip people, they will really make difference in the larger information ecosystem. And the trainings, the pictures, when we were seeing actually just are really amazing. So I'm coming back to the GNI because of, the GNI has been, I think, today stands as one of the world's largest and most impactful fact-checking community, actually, which has really made impact on the ground. And we had no idea, as Surbi and Irene were there in 2018 when we all have having a discussion how to set up a fact-checking community in India, because as we know, India, we have our own media organizations usually do not come together. There's a competition People do not often actually try to like take a sabbatical and come for a learning. But I think that the model of the TOT we adopted, essentially the way we included the media trainers and educators in the curriculum, and then eventually in the list of that 250 trainers, that eventually turned a game-changing moment for a fact-checking in India. So I'm not saying it because we were actually part of it, or we're not saying it in the news and Google supported it. But I'm honestly, I've been a journalist for about 18 years. I've reported from most parts of the country. I have seen the difference the project has made to the lives of millions of people in this country, because the amount of misinformation which was going around left, right, and center, the fact-checking community who were trained by the GNI Training Network eventually came out and they led the major initiatives in different states. In Kerala, for example, Sunil is there. We did training in Kerala Press Academy. We did training in Manorama, Madhurabhumi, I think in different parts of that state, in Tamil Nadu, in Karnataka. I think in every state of the country right now, we have trainers who are leading this training. I hope you're able to see my screen now. Yeah, okay, wonderful, great. So I will quickly come to a couple of things here. So let me start from here actually. So let's come to the point of GNI. So GNI today, the initiative started, as Surabhi was rightly mentioning, it started in 2018 when a small group of people came together and said, how can we build a fact-checking community in India, which has never been done before, given all our internal challenges and competitions of different organizations of working together. And then in a small office in Gurgaon, we came together on July 30th, August, and we selected some 40 plus media educators and journalists and editors from 8,000 to 9,000 applications. And it was a rigorous process. And then once we selected them for a 5-day long interaction and conversation with those people, bringing some of the best fact checkers, including our best actually from Alt and Boom, I think everyone together, we developed a curriculum which was used for that training. And once those 250 trainers came on board in different parts of the country in the next couple of months, those people then went across the country as kind of ambassadors of the network. So they were going back to their communities and empowering their own communities. So it was not like someone from outside was coming and training people in Kerala or in Karnataka or Tamil Nadu or Uttar Pradesh. It was the local editors and journalists and media educators who are as capable as anybody in the world. It was just a matter of empowering them with some skills. And once they had those skills on board, they led training, in a remarkable way. So in the last 2.5 years, you can look at the numbers actually, like 750 universities and colleges are part of the GNI community today. Like 1,100 newsrooms, almost every major newsroom in the country is a part of GNI India Training Network today. Like major leading TV stations, NDTV, India Today, almost everyone, every major publication. From Kerala, we have a trainer from Sunil is there from Madhurabhumi as a consulting editor there. We have a trainer from the Malayalam Manorama as well. Wonderful person, wonderful editor who led the training in that region. And we were very careful when we designed this program, and we are continuously working on it, making sure that these resources, this training material, the knowledge of tools and techniques is available in local languages. So all the trainings which are offered in the last 2.5 years are offered in more than 10 languages, more than 10 local languages. And in the last 2 years, we have been training at newsrooms, at press clubs and colleges with different organizations. There was a major initiative by BBC last year, though GNI supported that initiative as well, essentially trying to build a network. So we were saying, essentially, we're here to help the community of fact checkers to come together and learn from each other as well. And we were trying to make sure that the best tools in the world, because tools keep changing all the time, we try to come back to them and have a refresher with them. And that really also was very important, because what's happening in most of trainings across the world, it's a one-go workshop, one-go conference, and one-go event, and then there's no network which follows up. The difference with GNI India Training Network has been that it has been a sustained model, consistent model of being closer to the community. It's not like we did a one workshop in Kerala where we disappeared, no, or one workshop in Uttar Pradesh and we disappeared. We're always there, and we're coming back again and again, looking at different issues. And I will come back to you and explain how during COVID, actually, we did something, again, remarkable. Like at a time of COVID, when there was so much misinformation happening in the country about the disease, about the virus, the millions of pictures and millions of videos which were uploaded unauthenticate, and which were, of course, some of them bogus, misleading people, harming administration's decisions of stopping the pandemic. Our trainers actually kick-started another series of training in the middle of COVID. And you can look at the numbers right from the January when I think in March, we had the first case in Kerala, or Feb, the first case, the 3 students who came from China. And look at after that, we didn't stop. The trainers didn't stop. In April, in May, in June, in July, August, September. So what all we did essentially, instead of in-person training, the trainers went online. They had their own challenges, like the way I was having earlier with technology. So, but then eventually they made themselves available. And that is the biggest learning for, I think personally for me, that how generous people can be sometimes. Look at the trainers here. They're full-time editors, they have responsibilities, they're educators. But despite all their busy schedule, they decided that they're going to reach out to people during the COVID and make sure that we are all able to have at least some sense of what's happening in the country on the COVID. So we're not misled by some bogus pictures, some bogus media, which could create even a law and order situation. We have seen that during the migrant crisis. A lot of videos, thousands of videos which were not related to the migrant crisis were circulated, and that created a lot of panic among the people. But our trainers were almost there on almost every day I see today in some part of India, a GNI India training network, trainer is conducting a training. So which is really, really wonderful. And you can look at the map of India, even during the COVID. In Kerala, 151 actually, we had 151 people and editors, journalists, media educators who participated in the training. And I think this was possible also because the GNI India Training Network deliberately adopted an approach of having a diversity of trainers in our network. It was not a one community, one state, or one language. We had a very rich diversity in our network, which allows, again, the network to reach out to people in different parts of the country. And 2018, there were 1 or 2 fact-checking organizations in the country which were certified by a global international fact-checking body, IFCN. But today you can see that because of the work of this network, more and more organizations are becoming signatory of IFCN, which is essentially a testimony of the fact that there's more awareness among the newsrooms that they need to spend more resources or they need to devote more resources to fact-checking. And our trainings, which are essentially dedicated for newsrooms, help you to build that awareness among the top leadership in news organizations that they need to dedicate some resources for fact-checking. And today you can see like whether that is NDTV or that is India Today or that is a Jagran, completely started a dedicated unit of fact-checking in their organization, which is essentially led by the trainings which was conducted by the GNI India Training Network trainers. So during COVID, as I was saying earlier, it was a tough situation. And there were millions, and we have seen last year was extremely difficult in terms of, because you were at home watching everything which was happening. There was panic, there was fear, there was uncertainty. The misinformation actually escalated all those challenges. It really escalated to a level that people we have seen people actually dying because of misinformation, people committing suicide because he thought he will never get treated, and he jumped from a hospital, I think in Hyderabad or Pune. So we saw all that. In the middle of that, we launched a special training campaign in different languages, in different parts of the country. I think that was also very successful. Sunil, my colleague here, actually led that training in Kerala, in Malayalam. So I think this network essentially created a community of trainers who are like special forces, like they're always ready on the ground, looking for opportunities to engage with newsrooms and media houses and media educators. But we also realized by doing all this, while going through fact checking, you look at a lot of graphic imagery, like photos, videos, you check a video again and again to verify whether this is true or not. It all has an impact on your mental well-being. So last year, we tried to understand, can we train our trainers how to deal with the trauma which comes out after you look at a graphic image like number of times. So we adopted again a TOT model, the training model, in which we selected few of our trainers to first go through the training and see how they consume that training. So it was essentially, the training was focused on creating safe spaces for journalists online, essentially what they watch, how they watch it, and how they can immune themselves from the graphic imagery which they are verifying. So this is again like something which we'll try to adopt and learn something from last year's experience and see how we can take this training to local newsrooms in a simpler workshop format. We're still actually ideating about it, but I'm pretty sure given the situation we are in current now, I think a lot of newsrooms have already requested they want a kind of a well-being or mental health training for the reporters so they can deal with the trauma, stress, which has been kind of like escalated because of the COVID-19 situation. But we all, do the daily fact checking, daily fact check training. We deal with a lot of, local stories. We deal with the political issues. But elections are like a big in democracies. Elections are really like big. It's like a dance of democracy. That's where we test how strong we are as a democracy. But we have also seen the challenge of misinformation is actually huge during elections. And it's a global phenomenon, not limited to India. That there are different people, different characters who try to mislead voters, who try to create a fear create a chaos during the election process, who try to create fear about the voting machines for that matter. They tell them voting machines are fraud, there's a manipulation of votes and all that. So our trainers again came back to us and then with a field understanding that there is this requirement. And I think with the generous support from Google, we eventually curated a campaign, and Surbi was also mentioning about it. So Internews, Data Leads, with support of Google, we actually curated a campaign where we decided in 1 month time, because we have an advantage of we have people on the ground in different states, in 1 month's time, let's go all across India before the elections. Let's do a massive campaign of training for newsrooms, for general public. We invited people actually who are also not journalists in some places, just to see and understand why they need to be careful what they see online. And I see this was one of the most successful campaigns of fact checking. You reach so many people in so many places in such a short span of time ahead of the elections. So again, this was possible because the reason was actually we invested too much in the network in the last 2 years. So the trainers are ready, they're equipped. So whether it's COVID, whether this is election, we always feel like our trainers are really at a world-class level now. Like I'm pretty sure that India will have a more representation in the global forums when it comes to fact-checking community. I'm pretty sure as well, there may be a lot of startups in the future. I'm already seeing a couple of already in India, but I'm seeing more in the future, which will come with the tech solutions to this problem. They will become the elements of solution. They will provide the answers to a lot of uncertainties we're facing, because given the diversity, given the volume and the languages we have here. So I think the GNI India Training Network really kind of created that space for us actually to kind of build a community, a strong, robust community. I'm going to take 2 quick minutes again because we're just on time, 5 more minutes for our session. So what happens in a collaboration, that's the most beautiful thing about any relationship, that one thing leads to another thing. One conversation leads to another conversation. That's the beauty of actually networks as well. So when we were working on GNI India Network, there was also an opportunity offered by Google again, which was, can we look at more closely at health? Because while we understand that the misinformation is bad for the democracy, misinformation about health can actually kill people. Can we look more closely? How can we understand first what is happening on health and what kind of misinformation and all? And then let's see how we can halt that misinformation. So this project was called Fact and Fit. It was again a collaborative initiative. And Google in 2020 April, they announced a global initiative, essentially focusing on the different countries, how to address medical misinformation. So Fact and Fit was a part of that global initiative of the Google. We became partners with Google in India, along with the board, to lead this training. And the training was essentially based on 2 things. One was about monitoring online spaces, and second was about training. The monitoring online spaces were really something interesting and very insightful for us as well. Because what we quickly saw, and that was like knowledge to a lot of people outside India, but for us in India, so majority of searches online are actually about health. And what we did was that essentially we set up a task force of reputed people in medicine and public health from all across India. We invited them together. We sought their advice. How can we understand what people are searching online? And you can see this is a very diverse panel of experts who came. They gave us an insight. And then we decided to monitor 10 different diseases. And you will be surprised, actually, and this is like, again, is available. You can check it, about details about the fact and fit on hai.asia.com. But the questions people were asking during the COVID, if you look at these questions, couple of on my right, you will see people were really having no clue what's happening. And they were searching, can I go to market after reaching Delhi by train? Can a person enter home directly? Like they were not clear about it. So when they were searching all that, that gave us a first indication or vector what could become harmful for people if somebody misleads them online. So that project was really insightful, and that also underlines the point that we need more research actually to understand the misinformation and disinformation phenomena. We need deep dive research. And then again, the training we started, we had the health reporters from almost 16 states who came together. And these are the editors and journalists who mostly cover health. They came on board, and then they trained even doctors at different hospitals how to check misinformation and how they can become kind of first response to any misinformation which circulates. So I think the summit in Singapore as well was a part of this initiative again, that where we had all the technologists, journalists, and doctors coming together, including data scientists, and this was before the COVID actually, so how to respond to misinformation. So I think this is the bottom line from our whole thing, like why we are all fighting misinformation. I think that I always believe that the fear is not really about the people will believe false things, but the long-term and the serious challenge is that the misinformation really makes people they can feel into a situation where they don't trust anything. They will say everything is false, everything is bad, and that is not healthy for any democracy. And I think our aim eventually is that we just want to make sure that we remain, like as a community, we strengthen our community by focusing on capacity building. And in the longer run, in India, we have a robust fact-checking community which serves the public of India, which serves the media organizations in India, which serves the journalism institutions of the India, and which becomes like the reason for a global recognition for Indian journalists and Indian fact-checkers leading global initiative. So thank you so much. Over to you, Irene, actually.
Thank you so much, Syed and Surbi. These are such fantastic programs. And to be honest, I have just felt so awed and honored to be able to work with both of you and your teams on these projects. And it is just, the impact is incredible and really first in class globally. So like I said, it's not a competition, but that certainly India is punching above its weight for sure and in the fight against misinformation. So thank you both. I think we are just at time, but I think we can probably take maybe one question if anyone has a question for us. We don't want to kind of bump up against the other, our next speaker. But if anyone does have a question, we're very happy to answer anything. Maybe we'll give a minute. If you have a question, actually, I'm not sure. Maybe I'd type it in the chat or raise your hand. I'm not sure what the process is. What's the best way to do it?
Anyone have a question? I think around 56 participants are here. And somebody is participating from YouTube also. Nobody is asking question now, I think.
Okay.
Actually, this is really a eye-opener for all of us, really, especially from Surabhi and Said and Irene. You have made a wonderful job, really amazing job throughout the globe. You are doing it. Really, standing ovation is required at this point of time, and really applaudable success stories are we have witnessed it. So we really think that the University of Calicut, this is the largest university in southern India, with 4 lakh students enrollment and 456 institutions affiliated to university. So within no time, we will also think that we will also join your team with our largest student enrollment ratio. So we have a good team of students and researchers and faculty members here. So they are really want to join this move, really. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And really, Sunil also, coordinating with us. So he's mentoring our team into this line. So that is also very happy that Sunil is here to connect you people from different part of the globe. Yeah. Thank you, Sunil, for this.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice words, Rajesh, Dr. Rajesh. And thanks, Irene, very much. Thanks, Surabhi. Thanks, Said. It's a pleasure meeting you here. I think we all are working for a noble cause. And I think we will reach out again and we will keep in touch in this program. And the university is for 400,000 students in the Kerala. If they can join with us, because they are actually the computer science department and the university is maintaining a program for the AI and application of AI and ML in fact checking and verification. And they are doing it with the help of Queen's University in Belfast. And the professor in Queen's University is joining here for the next session in the application of AI and ML in this thing. Okay. Then the university is also planning to have a media literacy program for their students with the zero credit program. And the students need to complete it before completing their course in the university. So that will be a great program. Then I will reach out all you for a help, support and suggestions for this program soon, I think. And Dr. Rajesh will coordinate this program. Okay, thank you again. Thank you very much. And let us conclude the session now. And over
Thank
to
you, everyone.
Reshma, yeah, please.
Thank you. Now let's break for 10 minutes. Please join back by 11:15 sharp for the next session by Dr. Deepak Patman on data science for fake news detection. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you
so much.
If you're interested, you may continue. You may continue the session of Deepak, Dr. Deepak from Queen's University, Belfast in UK. Yeah.
Welcome back. Now we will listen to Dr. Deepak Patman. Our resource person holds a faculty position in computer science at Queen's University, Belfast, UK. His research interests include data analytics, natural language processing, machine learning, similarity search, and information retrieval. He has a large number of research papers and 10 patents on his credit. A team in the Department of Computer Science, University of Calicut, is involved in the research related to fake news detection and related issues under his mentoring. I feel proud and really honored to invite Dr. Deepak Patman to handle the session. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Reshma. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
It's all well. Okay. Yeah, let me just share my screen now. Is it all right? Can you see this in full screen mode? I'm not so much used to WebEx. So.
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah, visible. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Right. So the title of my talk today is Data Science for Fake News. And unlike maybe certain other talks, I will just touch upon just a little bit on some technologies, on some machine learning technologies as well. And some of this work is also, I'm pleased to tell you, is with the University of Calicut and Letitia's team over there. So this is the outline of my talk. I'll start with some fake news examples, just to set the context and set the stage for the talk. And then I'll talk about some psychological factors that drive fake news. And then we'll talk about two research works. And as I said earlier, I will talk only at the level of superficial detail and not so much into the technical stuff. I'm fully aware of the interdisciplinarity of the audience here. And then we will look at some human and social factors that data science research into fake news should be aware of. So firstly, fake news, although we have started talking about it recently, it is not new. Fake news is generally meant to refer to things that are intentionally false, and there is a spectrum of fake news. There could be little biases in the news, and that could be regarded as potentially not so factual. And there could be even misinterpretations of the news. For example, there could be, somebody could have said something, and there could be 2 or 3 interpretations of it, and legitimately choosing an interpretation which does not seem to be valid could be thought of as fake news. And at the other end of the spectrum is actually misrepresentation, where you have some facts and you want to intentionally misrepresent the facts in order to serve some malicious intent. And may I just mention that as we go along, feel free to type in questions in the chat. I might be able to take it only at the end, but it's nevertheless useful if we can have it in the chat there, so we can attend to all of them towards the end. So fake news came into prominence in 2016. As some of you might be aware, if you had been following the United States elections of 2016, which brought Trump into power. So during that election is when post-truth and fake news came into the center stage, and Oxford dictionaries. So these dictionaries have this thing called the word of the year, where they talk about the word that was most that was in the news, that was in the middle of the news. So the word of the year for Oxford dictionaries in 2016 was post-truth. The word of the year for Collins Dictionary in 2017 was fake news. And as you can see, they have some examples of an illustration of some fake news, etc. So fake news is not new, despite us talking about it in 2021 and talking about it more and more going forward. It is not really new. It has been there all the time. And if you have been aware of the Indian epics and so on, so there are stories about how some fake news from the battlefield was used to facilitate some murders and so on. But here I have an example from Italy, where there was this poet called Piero Aretino. It was the papal conclave. It was the eve of the papal conclave to elect the next pope. And Piero Aretino was quite shrewd with his words and so on. So he was a poet. So what he did was he wanted some people to win. Okay, and what he did was he went to the Rome center's square of the city, and then posted a number of poems in favor of what in favor of his whom he wanted to win, right? So those were these things, and so he basically went and pasted a lot of these things. People would come and see this and read this and so on and so forth, and potentially get influenced by it in order to vote for, in order to enhance the chances of the victory of his favored candidate. So in a way, this is kind of very similar to what we see today, in the sense it is used for political purposes, and these kinds of things are posted on a different kind of wall, the virtual walls on Facebook and so on. So it is no longer the wall in the center of the city, but it's in the walls that we have in our social media profiles and so on. So there has been fake news in India as well. So I have here a few examples. For example, in 2016, if you remember, November 8, there was this declaration that certain higher value currencies would be abolished, and then there were new currencies that were purported to come in, and nobody knew on that eve of that night as to what this 2,000 rupee currency would look like, and so people spread all kinds of rumors. And you might remember that there was this rumor around the 2,000 rupee currency having what is called as a nano GPS chip. So I'll just read this out here. The unique feature of NGC, or nano GPS chip, is that it does not need any power source. It only acts as a signal reflector. When a satellite sends a signal requesting location, the NGC reflects back the signal from the location, giving precise in-location coordinates and the serial number of the currency back to the satellite. And this way, every NGC embedded currency can be easily tracked and located, even if it is kept 120 meters below the ground level. I mean, we're all aware of this RFID-based passive chips and so on. So, but I mean, you need to actually go and use the sensor to be able to locate it. So this is completely unfounded in terms of the technological affordances that we have today. And however, but this was widely spread across circles which we might regard to be the technically allied, to the educated, and so on and so forth. And even today, if you just search for NGC, I think one of the top results is a nano GPS chip. So it exists even there. It exists there at this point, and it will exist forever on the web as well. So, and there was this other thing. And this is a slightly different kind of fake news. So this was, I think, very popular in Kerala in 2018 when it came to the forefront, and different newspapers had to write about it. So the thing was that there was a lady who ate a lot of shrimp, and shrimp and prawns and so on are part of our cuisine very much, as you would know. So had a lot of shrimp and then had some citrus juice, and she met her death because of that whatever deadly combo, as this email talks about it. So this was when I looked for this forward, it was dated November 2011. November 2011 in some part of the world, and it came to Kerala in 2018 and made a big furore at the time. So the thing here to emphasize is that most of this is all right. Most of this is factual. Shrimp apparently just contain a little bit of arsenic, arsenic pentoxide or whatever. And when arsenic reacts with citrus, it does produce some toxic substances. But the key aspect is that I mean, if you needed to produce enough toxic substances to be able to kill a human, you would need maybe truckloads of shrimp and maybe several hundreds of liters of citric acid. So the misinformation here is kind of very nuanced, in the sense that it doesn't. Most of it is all right, but there is this little leap of imagination that this little amount of toxic substance would probably kill a person. So it is harder to debunk these kinds of stories, right? If you look at shrimp and arsenic, you will find some evidence of it. If you look at arsenic and maybe citrus, you will find some evidence of it. But the quantum of the amount produced is where the fakeness lies. And so let me talk about some psychological properties or psychological affordance, cognitive things in humans which enable the spread of fake news. There is this thing called confirmation bias. I think some of you might be aware of it, some of you may not be. But confirmation bias basically says that when you hear and see a lot of things, and you believe certain things, and the ones that you value are the things in the intersection of what you hear and see and what you believe. So if you believe that if you believe that maybe well, shrimp and citrus would cause death, then you will search for you will find some evidence. You will find maybe 100 evidences that refute it, and maybe 2 evidences that agree to it. And if you want to believe that, you would probably value the 2 evidences that agrees to it. So, and also in this digital age, there has been an increasing amount of digital technologies such as personalization and various kinds of tailored content delivery, which means that what you hear or see can be easily manipulated in the days of social media. We no longer, some people proudly say that they no longer need read any newspapers and they read only their social media feeds. But the social media feed is different for every person, right? So the social media feed that you read it could contain information that aligns to what you believe. So it is not one kind of news that is fed to everybody, but it is various kinds of news with various using the flexibility within the factual within the fact to fake spectrum and so on that these personalization algorithms tend to deliver to you. Unlike this, if you read a newspaper which is produced for a community level, then everybody reads the same thing. So what you hear or see is all the same for most of them, for most people. So these digital technologies have changed this in order to accentuate the impact of confirmation bias. And there is a cartoon for confirmation bias that says that an inconvenient truth has very little takers, whereas a reassuring lie has much more takers. Let's look at another aspect of cognition and fake news. So there was this experiment to study the persistence of fake news by Kiyosaki and Riots in 2016. What they did was they gathered a few people and told them the story of a nurse. And the nurse was apparently a very good person. So she was a loyal employee, and she was very well appreciated by her patients and so on. However, she had this notorious habit of stealing things from the pharmacy and then selling it and buying designer clothes with it. And now people were asked to rate her on trustworthiness. And people obviously rated her very low because, however good the nurse is, if she steals stuff from the pharmacy and the hospital and sells it for her own personal gain, then she is not going to be trustworthy. But now they were told you see the second part of the story, which was about her stealing this, was planted by a colleague of hers who wanted to harm her reputation. So the story about Natalie stealing stuff was fake news. So now rate her on trustworthiness again. So it is found that the first negative rating that they gave was seen to influence the second rating quite a lot. So even though it was all good about her, the story was all good about her, discounting the fact that the stealing story was fake, she should have received a much higher trustworthiness rating. But because of the story being because of the audience being exposed to the story, they probably have this little apprehension in their mind as to whether as you say, there should be something, there should have been something going on. Nobody could have planned a story just like that and so on. So even if you're debunked, even if the fake news is debunked, your exposure to fake news still affects and continues to affect the way you think. So, and this is what election time fake news tries to exploit. So, in October 2016, there was this news article: Pope Francis shocks the world, endorses Donald Trump for president, and releases a statement. And very shortly, maybe 1 or 2 days after that, the news was shown to be false. And in November 2016, you had the U.S. elections, right? So it was debunked. It's the same story like the nurse. There was a fake story that came in, and that belief in that fake story would advantage a candidate, and the fake story was taken down, but still it continues to probably influence, and it probably continued to influence a lot of people who voted in the elections, and probably was partly responsible for Trump's victory as well, as many people would like to believe. And this happens in India as well. In India, as you know, there is a regime. The regulatory regime says that you should not be publishing surveys on the outcome of the elections once the mortal code of conduct comes into force. However, in WhatsApp, there is no such thing, right? There is no accountability. You can write up something and just forward it. And in 2017, I think, or 2018, 1 week before the elections, there was this 1 week before the Karnataka elections, there was this new WhatsApp thing, which I also received, and many of you might have received, which said that a particular party would win so many seats. And of course, it turned out that they did not win that many seats, and the other parties were able to form a government, which was later toppled by various kinds of other kinds of trading and so on and so forth. But essentially, the idea here is you want to expose people to fake news of a particular flavor in order to give an advantage to a party, and that advantage persists even if the fake news is debunked. So you continue to produce this fake news. I mean, whoever debunks it will debunk it, but that doesn't matter because you're already influencing people, and that influence kind of persists even after debunking. So this is a very interesting issue as to how you would deal with it, right? Because you can impose some fines, but people would be happy to pay fines. Maybe you'll impose 1 lakh fine, but the impact that they have by means of this fake news is probably more than 1 lakh and so on. So, and there were computer scientists who looked at who is responsible for the spread of fake news, and by who. What they wanted to analyze in particular was the relative responsibility held by human users and Twitter bots. As to the spread of fake news, and they found that falsehood diffused significantly faster, deeper, and more broadly than truth in all categories of information. But they were looking for who is responsible for this improved spread of fake news, or enhanced spread of fake news as compared to real news. And the study conducted an analysis to examine whether humans or bots were more responsible, and they figured out that humans like and share fake news more than truth. So humans, when you expose humans to fake and real news, they are likely to share the fake news more than the real news, because, well, you can think about why it should be, but you can speculate it. And I have my own informed speculation that potentially in the real world, there isn't as many interesting things that are happening. Right? People go about their lives, and there might be an odd crime here and there, and so on. But in the virtual world, which is up for your imagination, you can create all sorts of interesting stories. And if interestingness drives attention, then you would probably find that the real news is at a disadvantage with respect to that. And why do humans share more? There was another study where they tried to look at this one a little bit more empirically, and they found that fake news is more novel, as we would imagine, and they quantified the uniqueness of fake news, and they found that the information uniqueness of fake news is around 10% higher than that of true news. And they used various other kinds of divergences and measures in order to quantify this. And they found that according to Kale divergence, there was a similar trend around 7 to 8%. And according to Bhattacharya distance, which is another measure to compute the difference and the novelty, and there was a slight difference, but it always was consistent. And that fake news was generally found to be more unique, more novel, more surprising, and so on and so forth. And it also, another aspect of it is the emotion profiles. So if you look at the emotion profile, a fake news is a different emotion profile than truth. And somebody tried to quantify this again. I mean, when you have a lot of data, you have a lot of computer scientists trying to crunch the data and produce some outputs and so on. So what they did was, in the case of surprise. So let's look at. I'll tell you how to interpret this chart. In the case of surprise, this is the profile of real news. So real news has a surprise quotient of around 0.1 to 0.13. There is some unit in which you can measure the amount of surprise in the real news. Whereas in the case of fake news, the surprise profile is much higher, in the sense that the surprise quotient is around 0.17. So fake news is more surprising, and no wonder that we're all sharing that more widely, because it's more surprising. And it's even more disgusting as well. I mean, you can think about things like, for example, if you come across a news article which says that you have been brushing your teeth all wrong, and there is a list of things which you're doing wrong, and item number 6 will tell you will surprise you or something. So it creates a lot of surprise. It creates a lot of disgust, maybe in the sense that okay, well, you have been doing something wrongly, and so on and so forth. And surprise and disgust are particularly emphasized in the case of fake news, whereas joy, trust, and so on, well, all the nice things are not so much are not so much emphasized in fake news. So fake news is a particular emotion profile, and that is what helps it spread far and wide and deep and broad. So I'll talk about a particular work that we did with Lagish's team and Noop as a PhD student at University of Calicut, and this was a paper we published in Ideas 2020 conference. So the emotion profile of fake news has been observed to be different, right? We saw that from the previous chart, and that was a study that was published in Science Journal, I suppose. So. And we were asking this question as to whether we could use this in order to develop emotion-enriched representations, which would yield better for fake news detection tasks. So can we exploit this difference in emotion profile in order to enhance fake news detection? That was the question that we were trying to look at. So what we identified is a way to amplify the emotions within the text articles. And given that real articles and fake articles have different emotion profiles, if you amplify the emotions, if you amplify as in like if you have some surprise word, you increase the amount of surpriseness in the text and so on and so forth. And we believe that if that is indeed true, then if you amplify the emotions, then if it is indeed true that articles and real articles and fake articles have different emotion profiles, by amplifying the emotions, you would take them further apart. And I'll show you a visual illustration of it. Let us say that this is and the green ones are real news, and the red ones are fake news. This is of course a toy example. Don't read too much into it, but this is just to illustrate the idea. And let us say that you amplify the emotion profile, and what you might get is a way in which the real news is pulled towards a different direction than fake news. So, for example, if you amplify all emotions, then fake news is more surprise and more disgust. So it'll become more and more surprising and more disgust worthy. Whereas real news will go in a different direction. So this yields a better separation between the greens and the reds. The greens are the real news, the reds are the fake news, right? So what we did on an operational level was to use what are called as emotion lexicons, and these emotion lexicons contain triples like unlucky. It says a triple could be unlucky, sadness, 0.7, which says that unlucky is a word that appeals to the sadness emotion with a weight of 0.7. And whenever we encounter an emotion word in the text, we add the emotion associated with the word also in the text. I'll show you some examples here. Let us say that you have a text that looks like this: Wi-Fi, a silent killer that kills slowly. So kill is an emotion word, as you can imagine. Endanger is an emotion word that you can find at the bottom of the article. So what we did was to add, to identify the emotion words. So killer is an emotion word, kills is an emotion word. I've bolded the emotion words. Misconception is an emotion word. Growth is an emotion word. Endanger is an emotion word, and so on and so forth. And what we did was to just simply, this was as simple as what the simplest thing that you could possibly imagine to do is to just simply repeat that. Is to add the emotion label of that word along with the word. For example, we found from the lexicon that the killer is associated with the emotion called fear. So we added fear at the end of that, along with that killer word. And kills also associates with fear, so we added to you add that word beyond kills and so on and so forth. So if you do this, you get a different kind of text document, right? The text has changed. It is no longer a silent killer that kills slowly. It's a silent killer fear that kills fear as slowly. It is not doesn't make sense to read. But computing algorithms can potentially make sense of these things and make sense of these things as in develop a representation where the representation contains more information about the emotion than the original text. And what we found that we observed much higher accuracy for classifiers that work on the emotionized text. And in certain cases, the accuracy differential was very, very high. For example, if you look at the KNN accuracy, the K-nearest neighbor classifier had an accuracy on the raw text of around 75%. And just by adding these emotions, there's nothing fancy. We've just added these emotion words, and it has come up to 0.925%. Right? This is the simplest thing that you can do in terms of a text processing, and that enables you to improve the accuracy of fake news or real news classification by around 18%. And if you do clustering, which is an unsupervised supervised learning technique. I won't go into the details, and you also see significant gains in that, not as significant as the case of classifiers, but obviously reasonably significant again. And I'll talk about one more work before going to some non-technical aspects. So this was a paper this was a work that we did along with my colleague Anna in Queen's University, and Soumya Ghoshal, who currently is at IIT Delhi, is I think is a master's student, has joined for masters there, if I remember correctly. So fake news within many domains are in the form of long winding textual narratives, and typically most of the sentences would be true, and you can relate this to the shrimp and citrus example, right? Because most of the sentences are true, but there is this little leap of imagination which says that amount of arsenic can kill you. The key sentence comprising disinformation would be somewhere in the narrative, and it's important to identify such sentences. So what we used was we used three heuristics as three features which might be important to identifying core disinformation sentences. One is relevance, that the key disinformation sentence or the key fake news sentence is relevant to the entire document. If you have a shrimp and citrus story, the key disinformation sentence would not talk about football, for example. So it will talk about something that is relevant to the entire document. And smoothness says that the similarity of the sentence to the adjacent sentences should have some kind of characteristic. And also we use this notion called coherence, which means that the coherence of the sentence should be high. Not quite high, but the coherence of the sentence gives us some information about whether something could be a core disinformation sentence or not. So these are the three features that we used, and we used two other heuristics on top of these three features called centrality and coefficient. So centrality says that the key disinformation sentence is likely to be close to the mean character of sentences in the document. I mean, you might find that these things look similar to the features that we used earlier, but we use significantly different. I mean, these entail different technical formulations. So I won't go into the technical details, just in the interest of making sure that the talk is appealing enough to the general audience that we have here. And cohesion says that the key disinformation sentences are similar to each other on the features that we defined in the previous slide. So what we had was, for every document, our method identifies this key disinformation sentences by making use of these features, and also by clustering them in order to agree to this heuristics of centrality and cohesion. More details are in the paper. I'm consciously skipping some of the technical details, but if you're interested in it, I'd be happy to share the paper with you. And what we observed is that we observed a significant improvement in the identification of key disinformation sentences. For example, we observed around 85% accuracy for our method, whereas the summarization method, which is about summarizing and the article, would give you only a 21% accuracy, 22% accuracy. So it's a significant jump from 22% to 85.1. And ours is an unsupervised method. And if you're familiar with supervised and unsupervised is about not making use of labelings. Whereas even if you make use of some labelings, you can only achieve up to 61%. So we got a significant jump in the accuracy. So that is it with the technical content, and let's go into some other non-technical aspects, human and social factors that I believe should inform data science research into fake news, and that I believe has not been informing data science research as much yet. So if you think of this, and this is more like a thought experiment. Let us say that you have an almost perfect neural network-based black box predictor for fake news. So you open up your browser and open something, or you open your WhatsApp and look at something. I mean, it tells you whether it is fake or not. If it is fake, it tells you that it is fake, and it's going to be 100% accurate all the time. So let us assume that there is a hypothetical thing which gives you 100% accuracy. Would you use it? Would you still? The question is, would you still read the fake news despite this 100% accurate black box predictor telling you that it would be that is going to be fake? And the answer is that people would still probably read it, because as we saw in the confirmation bias case, if that article says that this party is going to win the election and you like the party, would probably read it, even if this neural network-based black box predictor tells you that it's 100% fake news. Nobody conducted such a survey, but you would still read it. That is the psychological aspects working in favor of fake news, despite this kind of. So even if you build the best method using data science algorithms, you're still not going to be able to challenge the spread of fake news within the society. I'm sorry about some noise in the background. Where I am is close to the airport, so you might hear a little bit of these disturbances, but hopefully it doesn't interfere with us much. So my suggestion would be to basically look at not achieving technological solutions to this. This is a social problem, and we as much as we would like to believe that all social problems have technological solutions, that is entirely not true. So our idea could be to look at two kinds of strategies: empowering users to identify and reject fake news, and reduce the exposure of users to fake news. So how do we do that? Let's look at several strategies. One strategy to empower users would be to encourage fact-checking. The idea is to encourage people to use credible sources and contextual information in order to assess the authenticity of the news that they read. So if you find an article, well, one simple thing that you can do in your everyday life is that let us say that you find an article somebody has forwarded to you, and it says a website. Let's say a particular website, right? I mean, let's say Swarajya Mag or something. And then what you can do is you can look at there are people who have done some of the background studies about various online news sources, and identified whether these news sources are good or bad. So if you look at this website called Media Bias Fact Check, they have done a lot of analysis of these websites. And for example, in this particular case, it might tell you that this particular news source is a questionable source, and that is indeed the case with the one that I mentioned earlier. And if that is the case, why read that, right? I mean, so I would say that if you do this little a little exercise on the back, like you receive a WhatsApp forward, and you can look at this, look at the domain and search for it in these kinds of news sources, these kinds of sources like Media Bias Fact Check, who have done analysis of the credibility of those news sources. And if you find that they're labeled as a questionable source, don't even read it. Don't bother to read it. And even if you read it and you think that you would not want to believe it, it will still continue to influence you, as we saw in the case of the nurse example, right? So you should click a verify button, and hopefully there would be a verify button by some of these apps, which goes into a fake news detection pipeline. The problem is that the psychology literature does not support this very well. Why does it not support? Because of the selective exposure. Social media echo chambers cause increased exposure to information aligned with pre-existing attitudes. So as I said, like if you've liked some of the news articles from a particular news source before, then you're likely to maybe continue to believe that is true. I mean, even if your mind tells you that you should click on a verify button, you should go to Media Bias Fact Check, you should go to some kind of credibility assessment system and verify this, your heart will tell you, well, I mean, this is discomforting for me, so let me just go ahead and do that. So, well, this dichotomy between mind and heart is not a scientific dichotomy, but it's just to illustrate the point from more of a popular way of referring to mind and heart tensions. So that is a selective exposure problem, and there is of course confirmation bias. People would be less inclined to verify news and conform to their beliefs. This is all related to each other. And there is also this thing called desirability bias. People would be less inclined to verify news that appears pleasing to them. So let us say that you have booked a train to go somewhere day after tomorrow, and there is some evidence, and there are some WhatsApp travel support groups and so on. Somebody tells you that the train is going to be cancelled. Somebody tells you that it's not going to be cancelled. You typically tend to value the second person, because you would like your journey to be not disrupted, right? So you would like to believe that second person, and because of this desirability bias. So the other thing could be to encourage exposure to refutations. The idea could be to expose people to refutations. Mercy, did you want to bring up something? Want to ask a question? heard so that somebody had unmuted. They're showing this mercy. Or shall I continue? Krishna,
So you may continue, sir, please. Yeah.
So the idea is to expose people to refutations of the news along with the news. And this was something I think I picked this up from Alt News. I suppose you've already heard from Pratik Singh, or maybe you would hear from him later today. So where they have this fake. They're trying to show this as a fake news thing. They've done their fact check and figured out that this military person, you may or may not remember, this was a couple of years back. A military civilian dressed up as a military uniform was spreading some lies and so on. Basically, what they've done is that they've added a rubber stamp saying it's fake, and they've added a little button on a little icon on the top right saying that it is fake, and so on and so forth. So basically, their idea is to ingrain this connection between this image and the fake label in your mind, so that you will remember that it is fake. All right. So the strategy is to clearly identify the news as fake. And there is a little bit of a risk here. I'm not saying that this would entirely not work. This would probably work to some extent, but there's something called a cognitive fallacy. Always comes back to haunt us, right? Like we've seen in the previous cases. The familiarity bias suggests that people tend to remember the information that they've seen, but they may forget the context in which they encountered it. So the other thing would be, you might have heard from Mir. I have a little picture of Mir holding a class about his strategy in order to spot. Mir has been one of the speakers in this event earlier. So to teach students about critical thinking, to inculcate the mindset to question. So the side effect would be to encourage a scientific temper as well, to increase a kind of critical attitude towards towards news and look at it and so on. So and one thing that comes to mind is that news reporting in general has tended to be much more fact oriented than analysis oriented. I must recollect here recently what I heard is an opinion by a thinker whom some of you might be familiar with, Kesari Balakrishna Pilla, who ran a newspaper in Kerala. So he was arguing that news should not be about reporting what is there, because you see something happening and you say that, okay, this person is standing there, and that man, and then they might bring this person here now. There is the kind of reporting that we have seen in the case of in the last maybe 3-4 months, especially in Kerala, right? The court hearing is going to happen, and this person is walking out, and this person is climbing the stairs, and so on. So that is all factual reporting. But you should not be looking at questions around what is happening, but why it is happening so, right? The analysis behind the news, and that kind of a critical that kind of an perspective to news would be facilitated if you have a mindset that is inclined towards critical thinking. So a quote from the article that I found very interesting is that there is a need to invest in truth, even if it means taking sides. So so there are some risks as well. I'll just outline the risks, however limited or attenuated they are. Would these tendencies persist as the kids grow up? And would these lead students to devaluing the credibility of news sources in general? I would not imagine that these are showstoppers as such, but these are things that we might want to be aware of. The other thing is to reduce exposure to fake news. How do you reduce exposure to fake news? Exposure to fake news is a big problem. Around 47% of Americans report receiving some information from social media news sources, and social media news sources, as you know, is abound with a lot of fake news. So social media is not owned by the state; it operates on a for-profit regime. And if you have been following the news over the last day and today, you might have seen that Facebook has been in a tussle with the Australian government, trying to say that you should not regulate us. We will do whatever we do in terms of news delivery, and you should not be regulating us, and so on. And Google has been in a similar tussle as well, with a purported legislation in Australia around regulating some of the social media channels. the easiest way to maximize revenue for social media would be to get users to spend more time on their site. And how do you get users to spend more time on their site, more time on your site? You produce interesting content. And if you're interested in producing interesting content or delivering interesting content, and you don't have a commitment to credibility of news, then this often contradicts with controlling fake news, right? So you need to have some kind of a regulatory framework in order to keep them within their reins, and that is the way the entire modern society is built upon. Because if you allow everybody to maximize their own profits, they would be stealing around all the way, right? So we have regulatory structures to regulate certain other kinds of things. We need regulating structures to regulate maybe the spread of fake news. So the point that I wanted to make here is that market forces are conducive to fake news. So if you're trying to bring in regulation against fake news, you are probably going against the market forces. So you would not have the big corporate tycoons by your side. They would be on the other side. You would need to fight them. There could be other possible strategies such as quality sensitive ranking. WhatsApp recently put a control on forwarding to more than 5 others, and they did certain other kinds of little things, such as, if something has been forwarded quite a lot of times, it will show up as forwarded many times or something. But you can easily circumvent that. You store it in your gallery, go into the gallery and reshare it, and you would not have that forwarded label. So there are a lot of gimmickeries going on in order to say that, okay, well, we are trying to be good boys, we're trying to control fake news and so on. But I would believe that these measures are ad hoc and insufficient. And there was a recent crackdown on bots by Twitter, misinformation bots and so on. And Twitter, as you might remember, was on the opposite side of the then administration in the United States, which was trying to spread some misinformation around the Capitol riots. But do you believe that they would they would do a similar thing in India? I don't believe so, but we can wait and see. So none of the above can be enforced. You can have these people who are trying to be good boys and telling you that, okay, well, we are trying to do these little nice things and so on, but you cannot regulate them, right? You cannot enforce these kinds of things without a legal enabling framework. So what could be a liability regulation? How could liability regulation look like? Can a platform be held responsible for content propagated through it? If most of election time fake news is coming through Facebook, can you hold Facebook as responsible for it? But Facebook would not like it to be, right? Facebook always takes pride in saying that, well, we are not a content generation platform, we're only a content mediation platform. And what does it mean? Do you don't, if somebody posts a fake news, would you share it? Would you show it to users? Of course, we would, is what they say. But if it is shown to be false, they would not completely delete it off. They would put it at the bottom of the ranking. So if you put something, at the bottom in a social media feed, if something is at the position 10,000 in a social media feed, isn't it as good as you're not showing it? Right. So these are kinds of questions that they would not want to answer, because it produces more regulations in order to debates around these would eventually lead to regulatory frameworks that would control them. And can the platform be held responsible for not faking fake news propagation even after detection? And can the platform be sued for not taking down a news that was found to be fake? All of these are questions, and the liable and these kinds of regulations in India are at a very, very early stage. Australia is trying some regulation in order to do a fair sharing of the revenue from ads to content producers, as well as these mediating agencies like Facebook and Google. But these kinds of things are not yet being talked about. So all of these questions raise an interesting trade-off. The broader philosophical trade-off is about whether we want to be aligned with the values in the society, which is about ensuring social harmony and so on, or do you want to just allow the freedom of the private enterprise and get them to do anything that they want to? So these are very interesting questions, and these are not technical questions. These are legal questions. These are philosophical questions, but these need to be informed. These need to inform the data science research, and data science research should be informing the answers to these kinds of questions as well. So this is my last slide. In a way, if you want to use data science to counter fake news, if you want to use data science to combat fake news, combating would include detection, throttling, and repair. Detection is about identifying the fake news. Throttling is about once you've identified it, how do you stop it from spreading? And the repair is this thing where You have seen, you have had a fake news spread all over the way through a large subsection of the population, and now you found it to be fake. How do you repair the damage that it has already created? And if you look at the current strategy, or the current state, not the strategy, the current state of the art in data science and fake news, we are starting to see what techniques for effective fake news detection would look like, but we are very, very far away from seeing how we can throttle this, and that is in general expected as well, because throttling would require a legal enabling framework, throttling would require interdisciplinary conversations and so on. And these days, data science research into fake news is still being done in silos, like a bunch of computer scientists imagining the kind of problems and technical solutions for it, which is all fine. But I think there need to be more interdisciplinary conversations, such as what this workshop tries to institute across data scientists, journalists, political academics, and philosophers, and so on and so forth. So I think that brings me to the end of what I have. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer that. If not now, you can always write to me on email deepaksp@acm.org. Thank you very much. So I'm happy to take any questions from the audience.
Now it is open to participants. You can interact with the Deepak sir. So if you have any queries, you can post in the chat box, or you can directly unmute yourself and interact.
Stop sharing.
Murali, you have any question?
Well, yeah, if not, feel free to reach me by email, deepaksp@acm.org, and I will also be around for the panel later in the afternoon. I think it's from 4:15 to 5:15. So happy to take your questions as well.
You can also ask questions during the panel discussion, as Dr. Deepak will be present in the panel discussion in the evening by the end of the workshop, end of this webinar. And if you have any questions now, you can have your question now to him. Nobody is asking questions. That's wonderful. Yeah, okay. I think we can expect some questions by email. Then over to Dr. Rajesh now.
Yeah. So I think Deepak sir will be available in the afternoon session as well, so that we can interact with the time. So Reshma, you can brief about the next session. Yeah.
Sir. So thank you, Deepak sir, for that nice session on data science and related issues with the fake news. And that's the end of the morning session. And we'll break now. Be back by sharp 2 p.m. We have 2 sessions in the afternoon. First one at 2 p.m. on elements of fact checking and verification by Sri Pradeep Sinha. And the second at 3 on disinformation spread in India during pandemic by Dr. Issa Sanjeev. It will be followed by a panel discussion. Break the feed at 4:15. See you soon. Be back by 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Okay.